Good evening, children. Today we start with the next chapter, that is how do organisms reproduce. Now organisms, whenever they reproduce, they do it to continue their species. So the production of new organisms from the existing organisms of the same species, this is called reproduction. So what is reproduction? The formation of the same type of species from that particular organism. It is called reproduction. Now this reproduction, it may be of two types. One is asexual reproduction and the second is sexual reproduction. Remember that asexual reproduction, it takes place when a single parent produces its offsprings. Then it is called asexual reproduction. But it is called sexual reproduction when the germ cells, that is the gametes, they are taking part in the reproduction process. That is, two parents are taking part in it. Then it is called sexual reproduction. Today in detail we shall be considering what? Asexual reproduction. This generally takes place in very small bacteria or unicellular organisms or multicellular organisms which are generally very small. They generally undergo asexual reproduction. Now there are 6 different types of asexual reproductions which you have to remember. The first type of it is fission. Now fission takes place in case of organisms like amoeba and the paramecium and leishmania. Remember these organisms, they are very small. For example, if you take amoeba, it is a unicellular organism. This unicellular organism, it splits into two small daughter cells. Means the cytoplasm and the cell nucleus together, they are undergoing splitting. Splitting means they are breaking into two different parts, and one parent nucleus, it is converted into two smaller daughter cells when one amoeba is full grown. So this is how amoeba splits. This fission is called binary fission. Bi means two, means one cell, full grown organism, it is converted into two different daughter cells. Then this fission, it is known as binary fission. So this is one amoeba. Here there is splitting taking place. The nucleus and the cytoplasm, it divides into two. They are coming closer. They are dividing. That splitting is increasing, and finally they are split into two daughter cells. So this type of fission, it is called what? Binary fission. Okay. Then this fission, it can also be of the type which is called multiple fission. Now multiple fission takes place generally in plasmodium. This is the plasmodium which causes malaria generally. Okay. Now plasmodium, in this plasmodium there is a parent cell. It contains a nucleus, it contains cytoplasm, it is containing a cell wall. Moreover, it is containing a cyst wall. Now these cells in this particular parent cell, they undergo continuous division and smaller cells are formed from one particular parent cell. So many cells are formed, and when this parent cell, it is fully grown, then this cyst, which was the outer covering, it breaks. And when the outer covering breaks, all the cells which were formed, they come out, and under favorable conditions, each cell will give birth, will form a new particular organism, which is the plasmodium. Again, it will full grow into a new plasmodium. So this is multiple fission. Multiple means many. So one cell, it is dividing into so many cells. Therefore, it is called what? Multiple fission. So remember, fission means breaking, and the breaking of cells can be take place in how many types? Two types. If there are two cells, it is binary fission. If there are many cells, then it is called what? Multiple fission. So remember, amoeba, paramecium, leishmania, remember it causes palazar. All these, they undergo what? Binary fission. And multiple fission, you have to remember the example, that is plasmodium. Okay, so this was the first type of asexual reproduction, which is called fission. Now the second type of asexual reproduction is fragmentation. Fragmentation means a long strip of spirogyra. You must have seen algae in water. Okay, this green algae which is present in water, if you take it out of the water, it has got very long filaments. Now these very long filaments, sometimes when they are fully grown, they break up into smaller fragments. And when they break up into smaller fragments, each fragment, it grows into a new spirogyra. So fragments are broken. Therefore, this method is called what? fragmentation. So this takes place in case of what? Spirogyra, which is algae. It also, there are another example of fragmentation you also see in sea anemone. If this sea anemone also, it undergoes what? Fragmentation. If the body undergoes fragments or breaking, then it grows into, that fragment grows into a new full form organism. So this is the second type of asexual reproduction, which is called what? Fragmentation. Okay. Then the third type is regeneration. Regeneration takes place in case of planaria worm. Now this planaria worm, it is a full worm like this, and it undergoes regeneration. Regeneration means they getting full body parts from one cut. So this planaria, see, we have cut it into how many pieces? 3. And each piece will form one new planaria. Means we have given one planaria, we have cut it body parts into how many parts? 3. And all the 3 parts, they regenerate the remaining body part, and this method, therefore, it is called what? Regeneration. Again, this happens when a planaria worm, it is fully grown, and by chance if it is cut, then one cut worm, it is converted into a full grown new worm. So this method, it is called what? Regeneration, means getting the full body parts from a cut. Remember, the example is what? A planaria worm. Okay. Now the next type of asexual reproduction is budding. Remember, budding takes place generally in organisms like hydra. Now this hydra, you know, this has got a body part which is called the cylindrome, okay, and it has got tentacles on the top. These tentacles and the bud together, this hydra, when it is fully grown, it develops a bud. Bud means a outcoming which is coming out of its body, that is the cylindrome. Slowly that bud, what happens? It develops the tentacles and it is grown into a small hydra, and after that hydra is full grown, this bud, it breaks. Okay, if it breaks, it forms a new hydra from that particular bud, and because of the bud, a new hydra is formed, and therefore this method, it is called what? Budding. Okay, budding also takes place in another organism which is called yeast. This yeast, it develops, it is a small cell. It forms buds of other new yeast cells, and when this yeast cell, one of the yeast cells, if it is removed, again it will develop into a new yeast cell. So these yeast cells also, they develop into new yeast cell with the help of again the process which is a asexual reproductive method which is known as budding. So remember, in yeast also there is budding, and in hydra also there is budding. Okay, so this was the fourth method. Then number 5, we come to vegetative propagation. There are some plants whose all the body parts, they help to develop a new plant. For example, if you take bryophyllum, and the leaf of a bryophyllum, it goes into the soil. What happens if it is getting favorable conditions? It is getting water, it is getting nutrition. Then what will happen? These leaves, they will develop some roots, they will develop some shoots, they will develop stem. Okay, and each part of that leaf, it will be converted into a new plant. So even the leaves, the stem, the roots, all the body parts of the plant, when they can undergo change and they can form a new plant, then such a type of asexual reproduction is called what? Vegetative propagation. Now the best example here is money plant. If you take money plant, if you take the leaf of a money plant and you keep it in water, that particular leaf also, it develops roots. उसको भी रूट्स आ जाते हैं। मनी प्लांट का अगर आपने स्टेम लिया तो स्टेम को भी रूट्स आ जाते हैं। अगर आपने उसकी पत्ती अगर पानी में डाल दी तो उसको भी रूट्स आ जाते हैं। इसका मतलब उसकी लीव्स है, उसकी स्टेम है, उसकी रूट्स है, सबसे हम एक नया प्लांट बना सकते हैं। ऐसी मेथड को हम क्या बोलते हैं? वेजिटेटिव प्रोपगेशन। सो रिमेंबर, ब्रायोफाइलम है, मनी प्लांट है, यू नो पोटैटो हैज गॉट आईज। उस आई को अगर हमने निकाला, उसको अगर फेवरेबल कंडीशंस में रख दिया, यानी अगर वेट कॉटन पे अगर उसको रख दिया, फेवरेबल कंडीशन मिली, न्यूट्रिशन मिला, तो उसमें से हमारा पोटैटो प्लांट बन सकता है। सो दैट पोटैटो इज अ पार्ट ऑफ व्हाट? द स्टेम. Okay, so the stem, the roots, the leaves all help in the reproduction. Then such a propagation, it is called what? Vegetative propagation. Okay, and the last type is what? The spore formation. अब आपने देखा होगा कि bread, if it remains like that for 2 to 4 days, if it is in a closed container, it develops some mold on it. That is called bread mold. Now when you see this bread mold, when you see it under the microscope, आपको ऐसा दिखेगा कि इसको एक हाइफी है और हाइफी के ऊपर छोटा छोटा एक स्पोरेंजियम है। ओके, इस स्पोरेंजियम में बहुत सारे स्पोर्स होते हैं। जब ये स्पोरेंजियम पूरा डेवलप हो जाता तब उसमें से ये स्पोर्स बाहर गिरते एंड दैट स्पोर्स दे आर रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर द रिप्रोडक्शन ऑफ द प्लांट। इट विल फॉर्म न्यू मोल्ड्स। सो दिस एग्जांपल इज राइजोपस. So rhizopus is an example of what? Spore formation, where bulbs are formed, and then these bulbs they develop what? Spores, and these spores when they get favorable conditions, once they burst out under favorable conditions, they will form a new plant. So this is called, the reproduction is taken due to the formation of spores, and therefore it is called what? Spore formation. Okay, so you have to remember for this particular chapter that what is reproduction? The production of new organisms from the existing organism of the same species, then it is called reproduction. This reproduction, remember, it is of two types, asexual and sexual. Asexual means there are no germ cells, female or male gametes are not required. A single organism itself can undergo reproduction, then it is called asexual reproduction. So a single parent produces the offsprings. Asexual reproduction is of how many types? 6 types. The first I told you, fission. Fission में अगर एक ऑर्गेनिज्म के दो ऑर्गेनिजम्स बनते तब हम उसको बोलते बाइनरी फिशन। एक ऑर्गेनिज्म के बहुत सारे सेल्स बनने के बाद उसके बहुत सारे ऑर्गेनिजम्स बन सकते, उसको हम बोलते मल्टीपल फिशन। सेकंड है फ्रेगमेंटेशन। आपको जहाँ पानी ग्रीन दिखता है वहाँ जनरली अलगी रहती। Now this green algae which develops on the surface of surface of the water, it is called algae. That algae it is spirogyra. इस स्पाइरोगायरा में बहुत सारी फ्रैगमेंट्स रहती है। ये फ्रैगमेंट्स अगर बाई चांस कट गई तो भी ये फ्रैगमेंट से एक नया स्पाइरोगायरा बन सकता है। ओके, सो दिस देयरफॉर दिस मेथड इट इज कॉल्ड व्हाट? फ्रैगमेंटेशन। थर्ड इट वाज रीजेनरेशन, यानी अगर ऑर्गेनिज्म के बॉडी पार्ट्स भी कट गए फिर भी वो खुद का बॉडी पार्ट फिर से डेवलप कर सकता, रीजेनरेट कर सकता, इसलिए हम उसको बोलते हैं रीजेनरेशन। देन द फोर्थ इज बडिंग। कुछ ऑर्गेनिजम्स ऐसे रहते हैं जो खुद के ही जैसा बड खुद के बॉडी को डेवलप करते, फुल फ्लेज होने के बाद पूरा बॉडी पार्ट्स बनने के बाद ये बड निकल के एक नया प्लांट, नया ऑर्गेनिज्म बन सकता। इस मेथड को हम बोलते हैं बडिंग। रिमेंबर हाइड्रा एंड ईस्ट बोथ आर एग्जांपल्स ऑफ बडिंग। नंबर 5 वेजिटेटिव प्रोपगेशन। ऑल द पार्ट्स ऑफ द प्लांट वेदर इट इज लीव्स और स्टेम और रूट्स, ये सब जब उसमें से सभी में से हम एक नया प्लांट जब बना सकते तब हम उस मेथड को बोलते हैं वेजिटेटिव propagation. So examples you have to remember, bryophyllum and the money plant and potatoes, all these they are examples of vegetative propagation. And the last one is spore formation, जहाँ spores से हम एक नया organism बना सकते हैं। So the example here is rhizopus. This rhizopus it develops sporangia, and this sporangium it contains many spores. When this sporangium is mature enough, it bursts and the spores are out. When the spores get favorable conditions, each spore will develop into a new rhizopus plant. Okay, so this is how you have to remember for asexual reproduction. You have to remember 6 methods: fission, fragmentation, regeneration, budding, vegetative propagation, and spore formation. Again, I will be putting 20 questions on this part. A single line answers, a single word answers. You should be able to answer all of them.